Go.
Join. Yep, we're all ready to go.
Excellent.
Thanks all for joining this Ask an Expert exclusive to get a quick sneak peek into the Microsoft Inspire and what's happened there. Mark and Andy are going to take us through that. Mark Sawyer, of course, the Executive Director of Sensei, and Andy Newman, the CEO of Sensei. And as a bit of housekeeping, just as how we do these sessions, which are quite engaging, you can use the raise your hand feature if you'd like to ask a question verbally, or you can also use the chat feature, as you can see on the screen now, if you'd like to write an answer into the chat box, and we will read it out for you. Yeah, so please sit back, enjoy, and engage.
Lovely. Thank you, Cecilia. Just very quickly before I hand over to our fearless leader, Andy Newman, I just wanted to go a little bit through an agenda today. We have actually quite a bit to cover. The Inspire has been most interesting, and I wanted to make sure that we that we look at the roadmap of how Microsoft sees the world over the next 12 months. And really go into the keynote relevant items for the work and PPM space in particular. And that's obviously the subject matter expertise from our point of view. We've got a couple of pre-selected questions that you sent in earlier. Thank you very much. We'll go through them. And then it would be great to open it up for discussion on your experience, and also to see whether the Inspire resonates with you, and also the roadmap that Microsoft outlines. However, before we think about the roadmap, Andy, what is the Inspire actually? What is the Microsoft Inspire?
Thanks, Mark. So hi, everybody. My name's Andy. I'm the CEO of Sensei. So Inspire, just for a bit of background, is was formerly known as the Worldwide Partner Conference. It was the premier partner conference in the time when the best partners in the world would come together and hear from Microsoft on product updates, roadmaps, insights into where they were going. It's been running for just over 20 years now, and attracts up to about 15,000 people in person. Now, obviously, this year is slightly different, so it's been run as an entirely virtual conference. Now, part of the reason why myself and Mark are giving you updates on this is because of just the broad range of topics they cover. It's far too much for one person, or even arguably one team, to get across. So Mark and I, along with other people in Sensei, have been trying to attend as many sessions as possible to bring the insights to you. Just as a further background, I think, under Satya Nadella's leadership of Microsoft, it's now become a bit more of a broad conference that it also involves customers. So where it previously used to give probably more direction to partners of Microsoft, it's now equal for partners, prospective partners, and customers alike to attend and get those insights. And it's usually about setting a vision for the future as well, which Satya Nadella is quite good at, and I know we'll touch on that in this session. So the way it runs, there's usually a few keynotes from some senior leaders within the business, and then there's breakout sessions that are run by the product teams, the marketing teams, sales teams, leadership tracks, even some partner-led tracks, and RC expert sessions like this actually. And they range in kind of detail from level 100, very introductory kind of stuff, through to very deep dive technical level 400 stuff. What Mark's got on the screen here is just an update from Gabriella Schuster. Gabriella runs basically the area that looks after all the partners like Sensei, and she said that our partnership priorities for the year ahead, unsurprisingly, are around remote work, business continuity, security, and getting people to the cloud. So making sure that the first three are in a solid state to enable these weird and wacky times we find ourselves in. So I'm going to chip in where appropriate for the next 45 minutes, but I'd throw back to Mark. Mark, why don't you talk through the rest of this?
Thank you, Andy. As Andy quite rightly said, the keynote really is sort of the startup of the Inspire, and it was super interesting. I know Andy is a veteran when it comes to the Inspire or partner conference. He gets those over 10-year badges when he comes every single time and shows them off, of course. And it is super interesting and quite engaging when you are in a stadium of 100,000 people just waiting to hear those keynotes. And then, of course, Gravilla is one of them. Gravilla Schuster is one of them that started that. And this year it was super interesting to see how they actually have converted this humongous experience inhaling conference into a virtual conference, I think, which also outlines in many ways the social acceptability of remote work because of the need. And I think Gabriella said it beautifully. I remember a year ago, she pushed Teams. She said, remote work will happen. And even in her keynote right now, she said, who would have thought that 12 months down the track that we are in that absolute need and necessity. And through that, she then handed over to Judson Althoff, who is the Executive Vice President for the commercial business. So in many ways, the area, no, I didn't bring lunch, sorry. Can we just mute everybody? Oh, that's very cute. So Judson really started to talk about the theme of how Microsoft has seen what has happened and sees the next 12 months. And resiliency was really the key capability that he wanted to explain. Starting, of course, with the response of COVID, then the recovery, where they are really in that process of recovery, and a lot of organizations are trying to get into that. And then, of course, also reimagine, thinking about ways of how we work today in comparison to how we worked, 4 or 5 months ago. It's quite amazing, actually. This is actually a slide deck from Satya Nadella that we just sort of combined together, where Satya on the second day, which actually just happened a couple of hours ago, I know Andy got up at 7 o'clock in the morning to watch it, talked about the absolute CIO's need to accelerate this public cloud investment, because it has become very apparent that that cloud work really means risk reduction on situations that we face us in today. The question was also asked: imagine if the COVID would have happened 15 years ago. What kind of devastation would have had that in the business sense in comparison to at least we are now in the cloud, and the recognition of that absolute need to reduce the risk. However, at the same time, also talks about the absolute need of being comfortable bringing everything into the cloud, and the security aspect, malware, cyber security is actually on the absolute forefront, ensuring that everybody can comfortably say, hey, I can work from home or I can work from everywhere, and at the same time I know that my data is secured. And really, this is what they refer to as the intelligent cloud, utilizing the intelligent edge. From a business perspective, it's actually what they now call Microsoft 365, Office 365 with their capability, and Dynamics 365 and the underlying Azure capability. Now, he then went further into the concept of, remote everything, supporting really what Satya just said earlier, that we need to empower employees to do the remote work from everything. We need to be able to engage customers to remote, and look at us. I mean, in the past, we've done those kinds of sessions face to face, really. And these days we have a whole bunch of people in a room where we have the ability to exchange us, which again proves the fact that we can remote work from everything. Optimizing, of course, the operations through the digital capability and digital transformation, which I'll talk about in a second. And of course, also transform products from an analog way into this digital intelligent way. And thank goodness we as Sensei have actually recognized that quite some time ago. And Microsoft has actually spoken about that, not just this year for the first time. They've been talking about that for the last couple of years, the need of what they refer to as that digital transformation. And I know we have heard this buzzword lots, and it was always a buzzword where people say, yeah, digital transformation, don't really know what that means. And they're always talking about vision and culture and unique potential and capabilities, but really nothing tangible was ever there. And it's interesting because when I saw this, I immediately thought back thinking, okay, I know we have spoken to our customers that way. If digital transformation is the answer, well, then what's the question? And that was always the point of digital transformation. And we put examples in there, how do we handle change better? How do we get happier customers? How do we automate process, reducing mundane manual tasks? There were always these sort of digital transformation questions that we wanted to answer, to the point that we are not the only ones. There are literally, articles after articles from very, very important people, from Deloitte to EY to all of those, big five and independent people that have been talking about that, and have been talking about it in the context of digital DNA, the new culture. And let's not forget, this was really pre-COVID in many ways. We talked about, hey, how do we want to work in an agile work? How do millennials want to work? What does the work place of the future look like? And look what a tremendous switch we have done from where we were 5 months ago to where we are today. And of course, the tools right now have become very prominent in that. So again, when it comes to digital transformation, we now have the ability to really talk about the purpose-driven digital path. And in the keynote, they outlined that very well, where they say, well, a purpose-driven digital for us means the art and science of leveraging technology innovation to drive business and societal outcomes for good. I mean, for good is always a bit of a, a bit of a balance there, because it cannot just be for good, as we know. But of course, that is really the purpose-driven digital path. And for us, it really also means we are not, and for Microsoft, it not only means not just for the business world, but also for the societal world. Satya actually refers to that as tech intensity. He mentioned in his keynote that he's actually working together with Harvard right now to come up with an overarching model of how organizations can be measured based on their tech intensity, including KPIs, key performance indicators that can measure that tech intensity, all the way to the point where they say, well, it's the citizen developer, as they call it, the citizen business user, as I would like to call them, that needs to be able to consume technology in a bigger sense. Well, I always think about Star Trek, right? They say, hey, computer, do this for me and do that for me and build me that for me. And this is really the direction that we are going into, which I think is super interesting. So when we talk about tech intensity, or when Microsoft talks about tech intensity, it really is that immersions into the digital transformation, so that it becomes second nature, not just for a business, but actually also for for everyday's people like you and I. Now, interestingly, and yeah,
I was just going to chip in there, and people are going to get their value for money in the words spoken between me and you, because we both like to talk a lot. Yeah, look, I think it's important to put this in the context of the keynotes were given, particularly around a COVID time. And as Mark said, like, remote workforce came up multiple times. But beyond that, I think that most people on this call would probably, agree with the idea that COVID and remote working has forced a lot of us to rethink priorities in our life and to rethink how the norm should be moving forwards. So what you see on the right-hand side of the screen here around the societal changes, that was a big part of a lot of the keynotes, to talk about, well, we need to be inclusive. We need to make sure that everybody can sign up for this, and that we need to make sure that what we're doing is sustainable for the planet, and that's, with other, things that we've seen happening in society over the train wreck that has been mostly 2020. You know, we need to ensure that we're providing, you know, basic human rights around the things that we provide. And I think that's the full good aspect that Mark mentioned before, that everything is done with, you know, purpose as the intent, and technology is there to back it up. And just on that sustainable thing, so Microsoft has committed to be a negative carbon target by 2030, which is really interesting. Again, these things bringing to the fore, because I guess that's what we expect of our you know, partners and leaders and corporate entities these days. Back to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andy. Absolutely right. And interestingly enough, talking more about the societal part and now drilling into actually more the technology, they went then very deeply into Teams, right? I don't know whether you've heard that Teams is now also available for the private use. Again, just bringing it back down to the to the societal part. So Teams now has become so entrenched into an organization that Microsoft now also offers that as a free of charge capability for, you know, for private use, which is great, and it sort of outlines that societal part. But when it comes to the professional part, they actually outline quite a whole bunch of new capabilities and have incorporated the not only the ability for us to, you know, run those kinds of meetings, those kinds of webcasts in Teams, but really start to incorporate a whole bunch of capabilities for you to use Teams as their day-to-day tool and as their day-to-day user interface. Now they're outlined, of course, from a meeting perspective, that there are new things coming like remote background noise cancellation, better layout for content, and that you can pin participants' videos, and live captions are now tagged to the speaker. But the one thing, and Andy, we spoke about that this morning, was that transcription. What was that transcription about again?
Yeah, so look, there's some pretty crazy stuff coming to Teams, and it's not far away as well. They were talking about it rolling out in August, September kind of time frame. But there's going to be, so when we're talking now, there's already live captions that can be turned on in a couple of products, like PowerPoint does it today, and Teams does it, not great, but it does it okay. It's going to be able to transcribe a conversation like this to put this against me. It knows that I'm talking, so it'll be tagged Andy Newman as opposed to Mark or Cecilia talking. And then at the end of the meeting, you're going to be able to get that entire transcription in your meeting notes aspect of the meeting, and you can turn that into actions. They're highly searchable as well. Now, for those who are worried about privacy, security, etc., from what I can tell, you will get that little banner that we've all probably got now on Teams that says recording has started, the meeting is being recorded. You'll get the same deal for transcription services as well. I do want to say the background noise thing is pretty cool. The demo they gave was somebody like myself talking now and somebody vacuuming in the background, and they just turned on the option, and the background, the vacuuming sound just immediately just dropped out. There was a little bit of loss to the quality of the vocal, but still it was way better than trying to put up with a coffee machine, barking dog, vacuum cleaner, all those things that I'm sure we've all had to put up with in the last 3 months.
Yeah, super interesting, because, you know, when they talk about the social distancing in COVID times, it's actually not the social distancing that we should encourage. It's the physical distancing that we should encourage, and replacing that actually through the usage of virtual social capabilities. And that's really key here, I think. Look, bringing that again down now a little bit more into the work and PPM space. Of course, as Sensei, we have already worked on that very hard, and I know that we've spoke about the context of project management. Most of you who have been in our last Ask the Expert session know that we have been releasing our new tool, which is Sensei IQ, and really one of the very big components for us was actually remote working at the time, and that was even pre-COVID time with the recognition that we have the ability to use a tool, and no matter where we are, we can actually work and gain the information that we want. Just some screenshots here. As you can see, this is Teams and literally has your entire PPM capability within Teams. And of course, as a project manager, you can then go into a channel and can maintain your project related information, which is super interesting. And I think this is what they talked about in the keynote of reinventing yourself and reinventing the products that you're building. For us, of course, that's in the work and PPM space, but I know that they spoke about that in a much deeper way, in actually what they refer to as a low-code way. Now, when we're talking about low-code, we really talk about the ability for the citizen developer. That's what our Microsoft calls them. That's, by the way, where I came up with the name Citizen Project Manager, so the project manager by accident, as Microsoft likes to call them. The citizen developer is nothing else but a professional business users that has the ability to build their own digital capability to make their life easier. And Microsoft has done that through the usage of Power Apps, and our IQ, our Sensei IQ, for example, is built on top of this Power Apps capability. Now, Power Apps in its own right is really only the window into the flow of data, as I like to call that. Microsoft right now still refers to that as Common Data Service, but in this Inspire, they have actually now renamed that and called it Data Flex. And it's actually quite good that they call it Data Flex. It has, because Common Data Service is really built up on an open source agreed common data model, which all of the other software organizations have agreed to, so that that when we interact with different software solutions, that the data, the underlying data, is not trapped by databases anymore, but is actually captured in that common data model, which Microsoft now refers to as Data Flex. So all of the information that an organization needs to have in order to operate, manipulate, automate, and make a decision upon is now all captured into this Data Flex. So when we talk about Data Flex, and I just want to drive a little bit deeper into that, it comes very much in combination with this low code. Now, the low code capability is the application that allows me as a user to manipulate the user interface. Data Flex is the underlying data source with all of the data captured that gives me the ability to edit, create, manipulate, and automate all of those data sets. And that's really what Data Flex is all about. Microsoft today actually released the site, Innovate Easily with Microsoft Data Flex Pro. And of course, in good old Microsoft way, there is not one easy way. There are 50 more complicated ways to outline that. And really, I had to get my head around that this morning, thinking, but where does CDS fit into this space? Well, actually, CDS is Data Flex. So just be aware of that. So when you there are some websites, and as you can see, it literally comes fresh off the press. Charles Lamanna was the guy who actually introduced that in the Inspire here as well. And Andy and I actually this morning spoke about it. Andy, how old is the guy? What do you reckon?
I think he's probably about 34, and he owns the low-code environment for Microsoft, 34 or 35. But this is the new Microsoft, fresh eyes, and it's he who has the best idea rather than the old adage of the grey hairs who get to do it.
We'll call them the silver foxes, Andy, not the grey hairs. Thank you. But you're absolutely right. It is really, you know what it outlines? It outlines the generation that grew up with technology of being this first nature technology, where we still grow. Well, I still remember, I'm a pre-internet dude, right? I learned how to typewrite. Can you imagine? My kids laugh about those things today. And of course, they have completely different innovative ideas. And this Charles Lamanna had done a really good job of outlining what Data Flex really means. Data Flex, and I just wanted to sort of outline this, is really, we use model-driven Power Apps to develop develop all of our new solutions. And you will see your own organization will go down this path as well, whereby the underlying data source CDS will now become DataFlex, but DataFlex has now two different ones, DataFlex Pro, which is Common Data Service, and DataFlex, which I just simply refer to as baby CDS for Teams. I know that is a very, very high level there, but you can see in this in this particular article and also in the presentation that Charles gave, you now have the ability as a business user to capture the information that you need to make your day-to-day job easy. And that information doesn't need to be double handled, doesn't need to be rejigged. Actually, it allows you to manipulate that data through those low-code capabilities, and Power Apps being one of them. But Microsoft actually goes now down the path of low-code capabilities in Power Virtual Agent, where you literally have the ability to create the business users. I've done that before as well, where you can create a bot that takes mundane tasks away from your day-to-day work and automates them, where you don't even need to be involved anymore. And at the same time, you know that the information that is maintained by the bot is consistent and trustworthy, and that's really key. Same with Power Automate, which used to be called Flow, the ability for me to approve, to notify, to reject, all of those manipulative data capabilities, utilizing all of those different tools, low-code tools that Microsoft has outlined. They've even gone a step further here, and they said, well, you know what? The 5 focus area for the next level of low code is bridge the digital and the physical world. Well, you know, social distance, as I said, not virtual social distance, actually come closer with the virtual sociability, but the physical social distance. The AI, artificial intelligence everywhere, remote work. Again, we are doing this right now, of course, fusion teams through Teams, where you literally have the ability to work. I mean, I haven't seen Andy, what, 4 months now at least, Andy, huh? But still, you know, we're probably seeing us more often these days than we did see us before COVID, really.
You've still got the same haircut as me.
Yeah, I know.
Just briefly though, I do want to, with that interjection, make the point as well for those watching at home. You know, Microsoft is trying to create this low-code strategy to span all areas of people getting work done. Microsoft's always been very strong with what I'll call pro developers, people who use Visual Studio, people who are knee-deep in Azure functions, who are building AI bots from the ground up, right? That's still a strategy of Microsoft to ensure that they take those people on the journey and they provide them the tools that are required, but they recognize that clearly there's a whole bunch of us citizen developers or business power users that want to be able to create a workflow, that may want to just spin up something in what we used to do 20 years ago in Microsoft Access or Microsoft Forms or InfoPath. We want to be able to do that with the Power Platform now. So it's not one or the other. It's a bridging of the two.
It's a combination. Yeah, that's a very good point, Andy. You know, otherwise we make it sound like you know, technology will be will be self-maintainable, and we know better than probably anyone else how difficult that is, trying to make technology easy and intuitive, right, as a consumable item. And Microsoft very much goes down that path as well. And as you can see, this breach the digital and physical world. They had some really cool videos with their HoloLens, where they really have this augmented technology where you can see the real world and can augment virtual components onto that. The amount of field service work that has been optimized is actually quite mind-blowing, I find. So they gave example for all of these capabilities, from the virtual augmentation all the way to the hyper automation, where you literally have the ability to to support automation quickly without needing to boil the ocean or reinvent an API where it does that actually automatically. So that has been really the big piece of work, was in order to reduce the risk and continue the work post-COVID. the virtual and digital capability needs to become be ingrained, just like us putting on, well, our shoes or taking our clothes on and off every day. So it really outlined that overarching this year's Inspire capability. Now, before I start going into the questions that have been outlined, I just wanted to take a breather. That's good. And wanted to open up for questions. Are there any kind of questions already in here, Cecilia, that we should answer? Anybody that wants to raise their hand?
No questions have come through the chatting area, Mark, and no one's raised their hand.
All right, I must have been so incredibly clear that no one had questions. It's awesome. All right, look, then let's start. Thank you, first of all, for submitting your project, your questions. And of course, these questions are very much relating to Project Online and Project for the Web. And I thought I'm just going to outline them because it does actually go straight away back into DataFlex, into common data services. The question really outlines, and we'll go from the top, what is Microsoft's future development investment pipeline for Project Online? Given we only seem to be hearing more about Project for the Web, we are a large project services enterprise, so need to know that our Project Online investment has a bright development future. I think that's an outstandingly good question, and I'll come back to that because it goes down the path of what is Microsoft's roadmap and direction for Project Online versus Project for the Web, as much as the question news related to Project Online and Project for the Web. When Project Online will be turned off, what great features can we expect in Project for the Web? Which then also in turn is very beautiful. These are all of the questions, and I'm sure there must have been, I don't know how they came about, but they all go down the same path. What is the timeline for integrating Sensei IQ with other scheduling tools, and what limitations are expected to exist? For example, we have a section of a business who are wedded to Smartsheets. But I am advised that due to the nature of Smartsheet, it is unlikely that it will be possible to utilize that as a scheduling tool. So really, all of the questions go down the path of Project Online and Project for the Web. And I've actually done in our last session, I've done a quick outline of how Microsoft sees that in the context also of the underlying platform we've been talking about today, Power Apps, DataFlex or CDS, and the way that this works right now. Let me just rehash that quickly so that we know where we actually are in that context. So Microsoft at the moment, I would call, there are more, but in our space, there are essentially three different levels of capability: managing projects, Planner, which is part of your Office 365, of course, then Project for the Web, which currently is that web-based lightweight schedule capability, and then Project Online. Now, all three of those tools, except Project Online by itself, has one purpose, and it is the purpose of scheduling. Now, I'm going to refer to this as an execution tool. But besides the schedule, and we know that as project managers, beside the scheduling, there is much more to manage. There are artifacts like risks, issues, change requests, documents, approval processes, project program, portfolio management, benefit realizations, a whole suite of different capabilities in the work and project portfolio management space in comparison to only to the schedule or execution tools. So Microsoft made this very clear, and they said, hey, Project Online is at the moment our full project and portfolio management solution built on SharePoint, traditional PPM experience, and a full set of professional tools, which at the same time narrows the usage down to, I'm going to call them professional project managers. Now, Microsoft recognized that in the 21st century, and especially in the cloud world, it's not just the professional project manager in an organization that manages projects, but also citizen project managers, so subject matter expert that need to execute a project, or even individual teams like information workers that need to do that. And depending on the complexity of the project, they need to have the right tool for their right usage. So Microsoft very clearly said that we are going to right now ensure that the citizen project manager can utilize planner and project for the web, and over the coming, well, I'm going to say 5 years, it's going to be less than that, will amalgamate project for the web to replace Project Online. Now, at the same time, and this was already an announcement that Microsoft did last year in November at the Ignite, when Project for the Web was officially introduced. And because we are part of the Product Advisory Council, we obviously knew about this well in advance and started, of course, planning well in advance as well. And Microsoft outlined that Project Online, so the investment that you have right now, is absolutely still a safe and secure platform that you can work on. It is at least supported for another 5 years. The security and performance increases will be maintained. However, at the same time, they said, look, it's the grand dam of PPM that needs to go into their well-deserved retirement and needs to be replaced by the new flagship, which is becoming Project for the Web. So you will see over the next coming periods, Project for the Web's capability of the schedule tool, of the execution tool, will be increased. And really what Microsoft is doing is they're utilizing 35 years of experiencing MS Project, and they cloudify that into the common data service, or now into DataFlex. So this will, in DataFlex, in CDS, will become the schedule engine. And because the DataFlex and common data service can be utilized to then build your applications, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, to utilize those data sets, will then form that new overarching solution. So we at Sensei, we built, for example, Sensei IQ on those building blocks of low-code or Power Apps applications that Microsoft provides us with, and utilize the data store of DataFlex Common Data Service. So that's really how this is going to go out over the next 5 years now. And we already spoke, and I think I've outlined this the last time as well. We created, of course, a roadmap for our existing Project Online users, whether these are Jumpstart users or Empower PPM users, and said, okay, there will come the time where we will need to migrate you over. And there are different ways how you can do this. Obviously, we have 3 different options. We have a blank sheet where we can say, hey, I want Project for the Web or Sensei IQ to be just my next tool. And we just simply retire Project Online. Then we will have lots of parallel transitions where you will use Project Online, where we will then run where we will run Sensei IQ in parallel, because we have the reporting up. We can actually knit them together. And as we then retire projects in Project Online, we then can slowly migrate them into Sensei IQ. Or, and this is what we are working on right now as well, is what we refer to an in-place transition. So there will come the time where Microsoft will retire Project Online, and then we will have the ability to simply migrate your content from Project Online into Sensei IQ. Now, we refer to this project at Sumero, which means to collect. And the reason why we call that is because we will not only support Project for the Web and Project Online, but we will be able to support execution tools that are appropriate for the right project. However, with the overarching layer of consistent artifacts like risks, issues, change requests, program portfolios, benefit realization. So really the task management capability in those execution tools will be supported through Atsumero. And what that means for you as a user is you can actually literally use the tool you want to execute your project, and the organization will get the governance, consistency, and trustworthy information on that data flex layer that we are utilizing. So that's how all of this is going to be spinned up. You can already have most of these options, which is the blank sheet and the parallel transition options, and we are starting to work with organizations that say, hey, I need to have a new feature set, or I want to invite my citizen project managers into the mix of project managers. Can we have Project Online and IQ in parallel? And we're starting to work down that path, of course. You will see the Atsumero, and over the next meetings, I will obviously keep you informed how this Atsumero will actually then be released. It's as I said, my product team says it's early summer 2020. I always like that, and I learned that from Microsoft that says, yeah, it will be in wave 2, and whatever wave 2 may be. I think it is actually October wave 2 for Microsoft. So for us, early summer, by the way, is the Australian summer, not the European summer, despite my German accent. So this is how we are planning to migrate you over. So the short of the story when it comes to the questions again. Your Project Online investment absolutely is sound, is safe, and it works perfectly fine. New innovations, just like any other software, it's an evolution of technology. It just simply flows into this common data service or data flex right now. And the user interface will ultimately be replaced with the Power Apps and Teams and all of those other user experiences that will utilize that common data service. That's the same with Project Online and Project for the Web. What features can we expect? So I do know that there are. So Project for the Web, by the way, is now incorporated into Dynamics as what they used to be called Project Service Automation, or PSA in Dynamics. They now call it Project Operations. They had a very clunky user experience when it came to their Gantt chart. So Project for the Web is already replacing that, and will ultimately also replace Project Online, of course, in that space. However, they need to make sure that the schedule capability comes in parity with Project Online or MS Project. As to whether there will be a desktop client in the future, well, I'm not sure, to be quite honest, but I don't think that we need to anymore. Just like Word and PowerPoint, you can use that in the browser these days just as well. And the reason why they do that is I had a good chat to one of the guys there, again, younger guy who's in the project team. They said, well, if we want to roll out a new release, we just simply incorporate that in the service, in the centralized cloud service, and then everybody has it straight away. We don't have to do it the old-fashioned way where you have to then update your MSI, to have your desktop updated and do all of these administrative tasks. They now just simply come automatically as soon as you open up the browser, and you become a true consumer, not just a techie that needs to fiddle around with the technology. And that actually made a lot of sense to me. So I hope that I was able to outline all of those questions. The last one in particular with Smartsheet, well, the big question, of course, always happens is, what is an execution tool? Will we support Excel? And really, Smartsheet is nothing else but Excel. Let's get that straight. It's not an execution tool in the sense of trying to predict the future as a schedule. It is just simply a place where I can type in information and automate that data set. So however, you will see Planner, Project for the Web, Project Online, DevOps or Azure boards. They are the 4 that we are doing at this point in time. Then we will do Jira, Primavera, any other schedule tool that our customer actually wants will be incorporated into Sensei IQ. And over the coming month, we will share more and more information behind that.
Yeah.
With that,
Mark,
yes, please.
I was going to say there's a couple of questions come in that I will attempt to answer while you take a breath. Can you go back to the slide, please, which has the intelligent cloud and the intelligent edge on it. So it's towards the start. So Ilya has asked, is Dataflex only for Teams or for the broader Microsoft application platform? So it's worth talking about how Dataflex, or what was known as the Common Data Service, works. So if we look at the side of the slide that Mark's got his pointer on right now, which shows Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, and Azure. So the Common Data Service really exists as, I guess, the way to capture and manage and maintain and massage data in the Dynamics 365 side of this equation. So Dataflex, as it gets rebranded, or CDS as it gets rebranded to Dataflex, is something that's going to be available to all things that operate in that part of Microsoft's cloud. So we're talking about the Dynamics applications, and they range from sales, which used to be CRM, through to finance and ops, which used to be AX or Great Plains or Navision. It also covers Power BI and the Power Platform. So everything that we've been talking about today with Power Apps, Power Automate, the Microsoft virtual agents, because that actually goes all the way through from CDS through to Azure. Azure underpins all of this. So Dataflex Pro is for everything. From what I can tell, Dataflex, the baby version, as Mark referred to it earlier, is a very quick way to build stuff up in Teams, actually, and with the Power Platform in Teams. And I think that was one of the key things to come out of Inspire, is that Teams is going to be such a critical front end for where most work gets done. There's been announcements around Power BI and giving better personal Power BI apps that plug into Teams, so people can use Teams as their dashboard to go to find out what's going on in their world, and all these changes to Teams, as Mark spoke about and I mentioned earlier. So Dataflex and Dataflex Pro is really on the Dynamics side. It will cover more than just Teams. But it's a beautiful segue to Matthew's question as well, which was, is there any mention around SharePoint 2019 or SharePoint Online? And how does that work? And certainly there's been quite a few things happening at Inspire that they've talked about where SharePoint might not be featured, but SharePoint is critical to the underlying infrastructure. So I'm an old SharePoint guy, love it to bits, along with all its, rough edges, I'll say. But, they've talked about Yammer. There's a new version of Yammer coming, believe it or not. Microsoft has announced Microsoft Lists going into GA soon. And there's this wonderful thing that's been bubbling away for a couple of years called Project Cortex, which is all about taking information within your business, learning from it, distributing knowledge. All these things are heavily reliant on SharePoint. So SharePoint absolutely is one of those things that will be the gift that keeps on giving for quite a while yet. You might have seen some news from our customer care team earlier this week or last week talking about retiring of SharePoint workflows, and that's 10-year-old technology. SharePoint itself will still be a huge part of Microsoft's strategy going forward, and that is on the Microsoft 365 part of Mark's slide that he's got up here. And there's some wonderful things as well that exist, like Graph and Delve and all these things that rely on the SharePoint infrastructure. So that's
SharePoint almost becomes another operating system in the background, really, wouldn't you say?
It does. It's a bit like a CDS, actually. So you've got Graph on one side and you've got CDS on the other. And at some point, Microsoft will do a really great job of stitching them together. No Microsoft people on the call. They haven't done it yet, but they will. Okay. And Lance has got a question there around, like licensing, particularly around Dynamics, Power Apps, Power Automate. Look, it's a known challenge at the moment within customer land and partner land, for that matter, that it's still relatively early days with Microsoft and how they're licensing some of the products that are coming to market, and maybe they're victims of their own success to some degree as well in how rapid this is spread. So I wouldn't be surprised if it does come to a point where Microsoft does a significant review of how they're licensing the Power Platform, but that's pure speculation on my part. I don't know that we can comment too much more on that, can we, Mark?
Well, the one comment that I would like to make is PWA really is a purpose-built a purpose-built capability to manage project programs portfolio. So you pay extra license for that. CDS and the whole Power family is not only a project portfolio management capability. It's only a puzzle piece of the bigger picture. I don't believe that in a year's time we will have that problem anymore, because we will then just simply consume the licenses that organizations already have. It's like Power BI. Well, Power BI is not just used for project work. It's used for all of the dashboards that you have. And Power Apps is not just for Sensei IQ or for your PPM solution. It goes into every single facet of your business. So I actually believe the overlaying low-code capability that Microsoft is referring to will be the one licensing that covers it all. And you will not need to then have a PWA license and a SharePoint license and a Teams license and this license and this license and this license. It will actually mean that once you have covered that overarching, I'm going to call it foundation of licensing, you then need to ensure that you maximize that license by building all of those capabilities on top of those building blocks. And I think that's the big difference. Breaking the boundaries of databases that were purpose-built, like Project Online or Project Server, to now the data flex that flows to your entire business. And that's really the big difference between the licenses. Microsoft doesn't communicate that very well, and I am frustrated about that too. Unfortunately, you still need a doctor title in order to understand licenses, but as Andy quite rightly outlined, I also believe that Microsoft is going to do a big revamp of what this is going to look like. I think they're just preparing us for that now, and DataFlex is actually one of those capabilities. So don't see DataFlex and Power Apps as a project or program or portfolio capability. It's just a business capability that we also utilize as such, right?
Absolutely. I might tackle Daniel's question here as well. Daniel K is asking, how as a company do we move to Project for the Web if it's not quite as feature rich as Project Online at the moment? I think that's probably the best way to summarize that. And look, this is the new world of cloud that we live in. Microsoft, I don't even think it's Microsoft, I think it's industry, has this wonderful term of developing in the open. That means we are building stuff and we're releasing it as soon as it becomes available. So, you know, that concept of big bang release is probably, you know, a little bit passé these days. People want to move towards the lean startup and minimum viable product, and they want to get something out that works early. And what we're looking at Project for the Web is beyond minimal viable product, but not a huge amount beyond minimal viable product. So it isn't on parity with what we've got in Project Online. It will take time to catch up. So it's a fair assessment there, Daniel, that it's going to take time to catch up, but you know, that they absolutely have a very stated aim to do that quickly, and they recognise that there's large customers around the world that have made investments on this side, so they do need to take them on the journey. So whilst it will take some time, and they offer large timeframes of 5 years, it's not going to be that long.
No, absolutely not. I fully agree with that, Andy. Yeah, and look, it's interesting. I mean, we're talking even to new customers. We are outlining both of those options, and we are obviously very open and granular about it. And when an organization says, "Look, I am schedule heavy. Scheduling is one of my most important parts, and I drive my business onto that," then we would still very much recommend Project Online, of course, up until such time where, and it is our responsibility as Sensei to migrate you then up ultimately into that new technology world. I mean, that's the reason why we have these customers that look for that guidance. On the other hand, we do have also some organizations that says, you know what, we are willing to wait to invest now into Project for the Web, and we are willing to accept the lack of functionality now, knowing that it will actually ultimately come to the forefront, and we then keep them up to date that way. So that's what we experienced so far. Look, Lance, when it comes to the DataFlex, Microsoft additional cost will slow down the take up. That may well be the case right now. Oh no, now he's leaving. No, sorry, I was standing. That may well be the case right now, but I also think that once the recognition in an organization happened, that data flex will actually ultimately mean that you do not need to have any other licenses going forward, then you will see that return on investment coming. Yes, it is a transition phase, no doubt. And look, it is the same transition phase that organization says, oh, I want to pay a one-time off license for project server 2002, and I don't want to worry about paying licenses anymore, to now the point where we say, well, I just want to pay a monthly subscription fee on that and want to continuously have the latest and greatest. And that will be the same with DataFlex, we believe.
Thanks, Mark. We've got about 4 minutes left.
Oh, well, 4 minutes. That is great, because the next part was really about what have you experienced in your world? Give us that in 4 minutes, please. Look, clearly it was, this is a very, very always inspirational, a very inspirational conference, and very important for us. And ultimately, we are the long arm of Microsoft, needing to ensure that you, as the customers, also know exactly what's going to happen, and also where Microsoft sees the world. Now, just very quickly, in the last couple of minutes that we have, does anyone have any feedback on the vision that Microsoft wants to outline over the next couple of months, over the next 12 months? Or have you had experiences that you would say, hey, I fully agree with what they're saying? Okay, well, as for me, I do know one thing. COVID has changed the way that I work, and has changed the way that we interact with our customers in many ways, actually, to the positive side, because we have the ability to react much quicker without needing to take a plane and going from A to B, just to have the same conversation that we have today through our virtual capability. I love the way that the social acceptability has creeped into our society. Unfortunately, because of a very devastating reason, but I also believe this changes the world in that we live in today, and I wonder how we actually interact in the next 5 to 10 years. Maybe a holodeck, in good old Star Trek terms, will be the truth one day. Who knows?
We have a couple of people that have put their experience through the chat channel. So COVID has reduced the budgets that we can direct to technology transition. So it will have a significant impact on my organization.
Yeah, and look, and that acceleration, even Satya Nadella outlined that very clearly. The recognition suddenly, where people said, yeah, okay, we know that prior COVID to now, it has to happen now, otherwise this impact can actually kill our business. So yeah, Lance, I couldn't agree more, and it's interesting to hear that, that this is also in your instance the case. Yeah.
And then we have Frank, lastly, that's saying, what a fantastic insight into the future roadmap. Very keen to get my hands on it and look forward to working with you. We're feeling the pain of accidental project managers. I love the idea of targeting those PMs to support them through a project.
Craig, please reach out to me. I am having had to endure the pain of accidental project managers trying to pump them into a professional project management tool for the last 20 years. I have, I couldn't agree more. This is just really, it is pleasurable to do this now, instead of trying to convince it, because it's actually worth their while. Please reach out. I'm more than happy to also share our insights there.
Speaking of, I actually need to go and attend another Inspire session now. It's 1 o'clock, so I think it's probably about time to wrap up. Where do we go from here, Cecilia? People can get in touch with us, I'm assuming, if they want to talk further.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks everyone for joining. I'll be following up with you after this webinar and send you the recording, so that's available. I'll also send a survey out, so we really appreciate any feedback that we can get. And also, if you haven't already, follow us on LinkedIn, where we send any updates out that's happening, maybe some Inspire updates as well. So yeah, really happy to have you all join the call, and see you next time. The next one will be on Microsoft Teams on the 7th of August. So you get information about that.
Surprise.
Got to cover that one. Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, team. Have a great time. Thanks for joining.
Bye.